Hi, I'm Scientific Illustrator Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Creates California Holly Step-by-Step Painting Instructions video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the California Holly by using Nature Sketch Creates Step-by-Step Painting Instructions. You can help this tiny business by clicking that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and shopping for future creates at naturesketchcreate.com. First, collect all your materials and make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax, and don't worry too much if you think you might have made a mistake. Let's get started. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So just tape the transfer image to the back of the watercolor paper, and you'll just want to make sure the image is on the paper itself, so just over the paper. It doesn't have to be perfectly aligned with the paper or anything. And then take your graphite transfer paper, the darker side down, lighter side up. Place it on top of your watercolor paper underneath your transfer image and just press down gently. Make sure it's flat. You can start anywhere you like. So you just transfer a little bit and then lift it up gently by holding down one side, and check those lines to make sure they've actually transferred. So make sure you have the dark side down. If you have the light side down, it's not going to transfer those lines. And make sure you're making them dark enough so that you can see them after you add the watercolor. So you want to use about a medium pressure. This is meant to be a relaxing exercise. Put on a podcast, audiobook, maybe some music, or sit out and listen to nature. And just relax and trace over the lines to transfer them. If you don't transfer the lines exactly, that's totally fine. This is just a sketch. Once you think you have all the lines transferred, you can hold down your image in one spot gently and just flip up the paper up and down like a flip book, and you can move your eye from the top to the bottom to see if you've transferred all the lines. And if there are any you missed, you can add them in now. And you can always add them in later as well. Lastly, if you'd like, you can transfer the common name and scientific name. The common name text is just a little bit bigger than my pencil tips, so I trace the inside of each letter, little outline. And then to transfer the common name, I just transfer it by drawing right over it, since it's about the same size as my pencil tip. When you have all the lines transferred, you can go ahead and remove the graphite transfer paper. This can be used over and over and over, so save it for future use. Remove the tape from the back of the watercolor paper, and then remove it from the transfer image as well. If it comes off without any paper like that, pretty clean, you can use it again. If it doesn't, then you can compost it or throw it in the trash. And you want to use the transfer image to protect your painting while you're creating it from your hand or any paint spatters that might happen when you're mixing your paint. So always save that to the side as well. And You can lighten some of the marks if needed with the kneaded eraser. So make sure it's in a light gray spot, and you can just press it right over the lines and it'll pick it right up and lightening it up. And the more you do that, the lighter it'll get. And you can just re-knead it to another light gray spot. Knead that graphite right in there and use it again. And you can use it to remove any unwanted graphite smudges, just rubbing right over them. And I want to be able to see these lines after I put in the watercolor, so I like how dark they are. So I'm going to leave it like this and I'm ready to move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in holly yellow green. So first you want to mix the holly yellow green by taking 1 drop of the 23H sap green. Make sure to shake it up. Sometimes the paint pigment settles on the outside and you want to get the full vibrancy of the color. You want all that pigment mixed in. Just take 1 drop and then 4 drops of the 1H Hansa Yellow Light. One, 2, 3, 4. Just add a little bit of water by squeezing your water brush or adding a little bit of water from whatever water vessel you have if you have a regular paintbrush. Dab it off onto your towel and test it out to make sure it's the right color. Looks good. And then I'm going to add some more water to the side. Dab it off on my towel and test it out. Looks like the right color. Dab it after picking up a little bit more onto my towel. And then I'm just going to add it to the leaves and the stems and then just these berries right here, the ones that aren't fully red. And you can paint this in just like you would with a marker or a crayon, just starting from one side to the other and moving that paint in. And recommend working in one space at a time, and you can smooth it over while it's still wet very easily. Unlike a marker, you will want to pick up some more paint whenever you need it if the paint pigment is starting to run low. And if it's too wet, you're not able to control it. It means you probably have too much water, so make sure you're dabbing it off onto your towel before applying it to your paper. Just go ahead and go through and add it to all these little spaces. If you need a finer tip, just pick up some paint and then just roll the tip on your towel. Another good way to keep that tip is by putting it in the cap that the brush comes with. If you end up with any paint outside of the lines, don't worry, it just makes it perfectly imperfect. When you think you've added all of the yellow-green color where it needs to go, go ahead and clean off your brush. Let this dry and move on to step 3. Step 3, paint in holly red and gray. So first you want to mix the holly red, and that's just going to be a couple drops of the 28H carmine. You could use 1 drop, but 2 is nice to have a little bit more to work with. So 1, 2. A little fuzz on my palette I needed to take off. Add a little bit of water to that, mix it up. That just helps it flow better. Dab it off onto your towel and we're going to use the wettest, lightest, so that's going to be a color with water added to it in your palette. So it's going to have a lower concentration of paint pigment and a higher concentration of water in your palette. So maybe it's a little bit more. Dab it off on my towel and test it out. Might just be a little bit darker. It's a bit too dark, so I'm just gonna add some water to the side here, letting some of that pigment stay there. That looks like it's probably gonna be right. Yes, I like that. And dab it off on my towel after picking some up. And I'm gonna add it to all of the berries and the bud. So there's a little bud over here. And then I'm going to just add it to the berries. And clean off my brush. Then I'm going to mix the holly gray. And I did want to point out that this is dry. It's going to dry pretty fast because we're not putting a lot of water onto the paper itself. It's all being mixed in the palette. So when we actually apply it here, we're not having a lot of water added, so it dries quickly. And when you want to test that, make sure to just kind of dab your finger over it. If you rub your finger to test it, you could smear your paint if it's still wet. So mixing the holly gray, we'll take the 11H carbon black, shake it up to make sure it's well mixed, and take a couple drops of that. I'm just going to take a little bit of that to the side and add some water to it. The wettest, lightest concentration, lowest concentration of that color to create a gray. So I may have to add it a couple times. We'll test this out. Looks a little dark still, so I'm going to add some more water to the side here. Maybe pick up a little bit. I think that looks right. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that, dab it off on my towel so I get rid of a lot of that water. And then I'm going to just kind of outline the flowers. These petals here. You do not need the placement to be the exact same as the reference image. Just kind of add it in there to give it a little bit more dimension. Those little white areas. Just kind of adding it to the outer and petal lines. And if you get some in the center, that's fine. Just gonna add it in there, preserving that white color underneath. And then clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in holly yellow, green, and yellow. So you want to paint in the driest, darkest, or most concentrated version of the holly yellow green to the leaves and stems like you see in step 4's image and the final reference image. And so just go ahead and pick a little bit of that paint up, dab it off onto your towel, and then test it out to make sure it's still the right concentration. And then just kind of add it in. It doesn't need to be exact. Make this your own. Just kind of add it right in there in the same general space. My paint color was running a little low, so while it was still wet, picked up some more from my palette, dabbed off my towel, and then just repainted that space. Don't be afraid to try things out. This is just a sketch meant to help you to practice and learn. Anything you do will make it perfectly imperfect. Again, if you need a finer tip, after you pick up the paint, just kind of roll it on your towel. Every time I paint, my painting ends up being just a little bit different based on my mood or how the paint or the equipment is acting that day. My paintbrush, palette. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush and then mix the holly yellow. So take 2 drops of the 1H Hansa yellow light and add it to your palette. Pick up a little bit of that just as it is and bring it to the side and add some water to it. Dab it off onto your towel and test it out. That looks pretty good. Pick up a little more, dab it on your towel, and then just add it to the center of the flowers and the little stamen here. Picking it more whenever you need it. Again, placement does not need to be exact. Just add it to the same general space. And once you have all that added, go ahead and clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 5. Step 5, paint in holly rust, yellow, green, and red. So mix the holly rust by taking 1 drop of the raw umber, 33H, two drops of the 28H carmine, and 5 drops of the 32H raw sienna. Go ahead and mix that up. Add just a little bit of water when you're mixing. Dab it off onto your towel and test it out. Looks good. And I'm going to use this full concentrated pigmented color here, and I'm just going to add it to the anthers and make sure that you have a fine tip for it and just kind of dab it in. Again, it doesn't need to be exact. And you do want to make sure this is dry. Mine wasn't quite dry enough, so you can see it's kind of spreading, and that's okay. Mistakes make it perfectly imperfect, so I'm just going to finish adding that in and then maybe let this dry a little bit more before adding more. So I waited a little bit and these should be dry. I'm going to test it before continuing. Feels dry. Pick up that paint again, dab it off onto my towel, and then go ahead and add it to the rest of the anthers. Just kind of dabbing it onto those spots, and you can see once you wait for it to dry, the paint won't spread. And again, I'm not being exact about placement, same general space. This is just a sketch. going to clean off my brush. I'm going to mix the dry dark holly red. It's going to be a color in between the most concentrated and the least concentrated. So mixing it here in the middle between the two, dabbing it off onto my towel and checking it out. Looks about right. And I'm going to go back and do the other berries in just a minute as well. I'm going to add this color to the buds. And then also to these berries, and kind of start on the outside and move it up a little bit. Just really like the color red. It's a lot of fun. It's vibrant, pretty. I'm going to preserve a little bit of that lighter color underneath. Give it a little bit more dimension. And if you get any paint outside of the lines, that's totally fine. I'm going to clean off my brush. And now I'm going to paint in the wettest, lightest, least concentrated holly green. Again, it looks like it kind of dried out, so I picked up a tiny bit more, adding more water here. Dabbing off onto my towel, testing it out. Looks like it needs a little bit more concentration, so I'll pick up a little bit more and add it in. Looks about right now. I'm going to dab it off on my towel, and I'm just going to add it right over these middle berries here, like you see in your final reference image and step 5's image. I'm going to clean off my brush. Let this fully dry this time and move on to step 6. Step 6, paint in holly green and red. So first, mix the holly green. You're just going to take 2 drops of the 23H sap green and add that to your palette. You're going to use the full concentration of that color, so just add a tiny bit of water, just a little, not a lot, just so it moves nicely. So dab it off onto your towel and test it out. Make sure it's dark enough. Looks pretty good to me. Pick up some more, dab it off on my towel, and then I'm just going to add it in the same general spaces as step 6's image, preserving some of that lighter color underneath. Again, not being exact, just kind of adding it in, and pick up more whenever you need it. So you can see I'm leaving some of the color underneath showing. I'm just being really messy about just adding it in. I have fun with this, just kind of scribbling it onto the page. Letting that paint go wherever it ends up going. Be careful around the petals, of course. Paint those around those first and then fill in the space around it to be a little more careful about that. If you get paint in those, that's fine. Just a sketch. Next, clean off my brush and add the Dryest Darkest Holly Red. I'll go ahead and pick up the Holly Red. Maybe add a little bit of water. It's been sitting there for a bit. That way it moves nicely on your paper. Dab it off and then test it out. Make sure it's fully concentrated still. Looks pretty good. Pick up a little more, dab it off onto my towel, and then I'm just going to add it to these berries like you see in your final reference image and step 6's image. And again, it doesn't need to be exact placement, just make sure to preserve some of the other colors underneath. Let's start on the outer edge and then move up to the top part of the berry. When you're done, clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. So take the 005 black micron, and that's the smallest tipped micron, and go ahead and outline the common name. So retrace those lines you transferred in step 1, and then also go throughout the image and redraw the lines you transferred in step 1. You can redefine some spaces depending on where the paint actually landed, or just let them land outside of that space. So here there is a little bit of color outside of the berry, and I can just draw right over it, leaving it on the outside, or like here where there's a little bit outside of the berry, I can make that the new outside instead, so drawing around it. So whichever technique you want to do, it's up to you. This is your painting, your sketch. If your pen at any point is getting a little clogged and the ink isn't coming out, it is a very fine tip and that can happen. Just draw a few lines, twisting your pen as you draw them to make sure that the tip is clear of any paper that it might have picked up or any paint. When you have all the lines transferred with the 005 micron, go ahead and move on to the 01 micron. Say 01 micron. It's a little thicker tip. You're going to use it to write in the scientific name. And then also to outline the petals, buds, and stems like you see in 7A and your final reference image. So the thinner lines, not the really thick lines here. I'm done with all the 01 micron lines, and now I'm going to move on to adding the 08 micron lines. So finally, use the black 08 micron, which is even thicker than the 01. And it does smudge if you run your hand over it before it's dry. So make sure you don't move your hand in it before it's dry. Like when you fill in this common name, leave a lot of ink behind. Then also use it to outline the leaves, the buds, and parts of the berries and stems, and some of the petals as well. You can refer to step 7B or your final reference image for placement of those lines. So all these thicker lines. In this area, the line is just a little thicker, so I'm just going to double line. outlining the entire berry, just parts of it. And now we're done. Great job, and keep practicing. Great job, you've created a painting that only you could do. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun, had a chance to relax a little. If you like this video, click the like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and check out naturesketchcrate.com to shop for future crates. Next, you have some options of what to do with this painting. Punch holes in it, add it to your sketchbook. You can gift it, frame it, send it in the mail to brighten someone's day. Also, make sure to share it on our Facebook fan art page and use the hashtag NatureCrateArt to have it featured on our social media. If you have any questions or would like to see any particular plant or animal featured in a future lesson, please leave it in the comments below.